We are not crawling, we are standing tall. We are not asking for permission to exist. We are reclaiming the right to decide for ourselves. And this decision begins with our economy. We must develop industries in Africa. We must refine our own minerals. We must create value in our countries before sending anything abroad. And if the international community truly believes in partnership, then let them invest in our ability to stand, not in their ability to dominate. The youth of Africa are watching, and they are no longer fooled by speeches full of promises and policies written in other languages. They want action, they want dignity. They want opportunities that don't involve drowning in the Mediterranean, trying to escape a continent that should be the richest on earth. And let us not forget, our dependency did not come by accident. It was engineered, it was written into the trade agreements, it was embedded in the so-called development loans, it was enforced through coups, puppet leaders, and media campaigns designed to make us believe that without help from others, we cannot survive. But we are not children, we are descendants of kingdoms, of Mali, of Songhai, of Masi warriors. We built cities when some parts of the world were still in darkness. We are not starting from zero. We are returning to greatness. This is why we are rejecting the mechanisms of control through debt control, through language, control through so-called security partnerships that destabilize more than they protect. We are beginning to build internal resilience, joint economic initiatives between our three nations, agreements to exchange resources without needing foreign currencies, training centers where African youth will learn to build, manufacture, and innovate right here on African soil. The dream is no longer distant. It is becoming real. And we invite our brothers and sisters across the continent to watch and join, not with empty speeches, but with bold action. Let me repeat this for the world to hear. The Sahel will not be the backdoor of foreign influence anymore. We will be the shield and the spear. We will be the architects of a new economic model based on cooperation, mutual respect, and African pride. Let those who have ears hear. Let those who once exploited us understand. The age of quiet submission is over. We are not rebelling, we are restoring what was stolen, restoring what was lost, and most importantly, restoring belief in ourselves. May the voice of the Sahel rise like thunder and echo across every corner of this continent. This is not the end of dependency, it is the beginning of freedom. To my brothers and sisters across Africa, to the leaders of proud nations, to the youth rising in courage and the elders standing in wisdom. The time has come to end the division that has crippled us for too long. We were not born divided. We were divided by lines drawn in Berlin, not in Bamako, Lagos, or Accra. Lines that separated languages, tribes, rivers, and even families. Lines that turned neighbors into strangers and strangers into enemies. And those who drew these lines, they knew what they were doing, because a divided Africa is a weak Africa. Today, when we try to trade among ourselves, we face barriers that don't exist when we trade with Europe. When we try to travel between African nations, we need more documents than we do to fly overseas. When we need help, we go to the West before we go to each other. But this must stop. This will stop. We must recognize a simple truth. Our future lies in unity. The alliance of Sahel states is only the beginning. It is not a closed circle, it is an open call. A call to Nigeria, to Ghana, to Senegal, to Chad, to every African nation that still believes in the dream of our forefathers, Nkrumah, Sankara, Lumumba, Nikure, and others. We must build one Africa, an Africa where the borders do not divide our hearts. An Africa where we solve our problems among ourselves, not in foreign capitals. An Africa where our resources serve our people first, not the companies that exploit us. My brothers, the West knows the power of unity. That is why they built the European Union. But when Africans speak of unity, they call us radical. When we speak of self-reliance, they say we are turning our backs on the world. When we stand tall, they say we are rebelling. But I ask you, is it rebellion to want freedom? Is it rebellion to want dignity? Is it rebellion to say that Africa belongs to Africans first? Let me tell you what rebellion is. Rebellion is what they did when they enslaved us. Rebellion is what they did when they stole our lands. Rebellion is what they do when they fund wars and fuel divisions, then sell us peace. but no more. Unity will be our shield. Unity will be our strength. Unity will be our strategy. And this unity must start with trust. Let us trust each other more than we trust those who once enslaved us. And let us speak to each other before we run to foreign powers. Let us build roads, railways, and digital networks that connect Africans to Africans. Let us circulate our own currency. Let us build an African monetary fund. Let us stop begging for loans that come with chains. To the leaders of Africa, I say this with respect. It is time to choose. You can no longer sit on the fence. You either stand with the liberation of Africa or you continue to dance for those who do not wish us well. The youth are awake. They are watching home. They are tired of the lies, the corruption, the manipulation. They want truth. They want justice. They want leaders who fight for Africa, not those who sell it in secret meetings. We must end the era where African leaders wait for foreign approval before acting, where African policies are written in Paris, Brussels, or Washington, where African armies are trained not to defend Africa but to protect foreign interests. This is the hour of Pan-African renewal. We are not building a continent of slogans. We are building a continent of action, where words are backed by courage, where plans are backed by sweat, and where leadership is not about luxury but about service. I speak as a soldier, I speak as a son of Africa, and I speak on behalf of every child who dreams of a future where they can thrive without leaving this land. Stronger regional industries with reduced dependency on imports. But we must be honest. To achieve this, we must first rebuild trust between African governments. No more playing double games with foreign powers. No more undercutting each other for short-term gains. The West is united in its economic front. Asia has built strong trade alliances. Why must Africa remain fragmented? It is time we create a continental monetary union rooted in transparency, cooperation, and accountability. Let me ask you, can you truly say you are sovereign when your currency is printed in a foreign capital? When your reserves are held by those who once colonized you? When your budget is dictated by international financial institutions with no stake in your people's future? No, my friends, that is not independence, that is illusion. And that illusion must end now. I call upon the African Union, the African Central Bank, the African Development Bank, and every economic body on this continent. Start laying the foundations of a unified African currency. We can begin with regional currencies, perhaps with an ECOAAs or SADC, and scale up as trust and infrastructure grow. Let our scholars, our economists, and our visionaries work hand in hand. Let our central banks meet not to compete, but to co-create. This will not be easy. There will be resistance. There will be pressure from within and without. But I ask, if not now, when? If not us, who? What? The youth of Africa are ready. They trade across borders on their phones. They dream beyond artificial lines drawn by colonial maps. They are building a digital economy. We must match their energy with bold monetary leadership. Let us also explore digital currencies, African-controlled, secure, and inclusive. Let us bring fintech innovation into our villages and empower farmers, artisans, and students with tools for economic freedom. No longer should money flow out of Africa faster than it comes in. No longer should our treasuries be drained to service debt traps engineered by global lenders. And let the world understand, Africa does not want charity. Africa wants fair trade. Africa does not want pity. Africa wants respect. And respect begins with economic self-determination. To my fellow African leaders, history will remember us either as those who rose to the challenge or those who folded under fear. Choose courage. To the people of Burkina Faso and every African watching, I pledge this. We will not rest until we break every chain, seen and unseen. We will fight not only for our soil, but for our currency, our markets, and our economic future. This is not just a political revolution. It is an economic awakening, and it has already begun. Let the sound of printing presses in Africa become the sound of freedom. Let the future note bear the image of an African eagle, not foreign empires. Let our money finally reflect our dignity. The time has come to own our currency and with it our destiny. My African brothers and sisters, there is a war, that is not fought with guns, not with bombs, but with words, with images, with narratives. A silent war, yet more dangerous than many realize. It is the war for Africa's image, a war that has long been waged and lost, not on the battlefield, but in newsrooms, in social media feeds, and in classrooms around the world. For generations, Africa has been portrayed as a continent of despair, a place of endless crisis, hunger, disease, and war. And every time we try to rise, the camera turns only when we fall. But I ask you, who controls that camera? Who chooses the angle? Who writes the headlines? Who decides what stories the world should hear? It is not us soccer. It is those who benefit when Africa is seen as weak, as chaotic, as forever dependent. This war is not accidental, it is strategic. Because if they can control the world's perception of Africa, they can justify controlling Africa's resources, its policies, even its leaders. If they can make the world believe that Africa cannot govern itself, then they can install puppets, fund chaos, and destabilize us all in the name of help. Let me be clear, the narrative is power, and those who control the story control the destiny. When you are told from childhood that your continent is poor, that your people are backward, that your culture is inferior, you begin to believe it. You begin to doubt your own worth. And that, my friends, is the first step in psychological colonization. Africa is not just in a struggle for land or gold or oil. Africa is in a struggle for the truth. So today I call on a new generation of African storytellers, journalists, filmmakers, poets, bloggers, and digital warriors. Take back the pen, take back the lens, tell our stories our way. We must stop allowing others to define who we are. No more saving African narratives by those who once enslaved and exploited her. No more documentaries that film only our slums while ignoring our innovation. No more history books that begin Africa's story with colonization as if we had no civilization before the invader came. Before they arrived, we built pyramids, we conducted complex trade, we created philosophy, music, astronomy, all on African soil. Where is that story? Why is it not taught in their schools? Why is it not shown in their films? Because it does not serve their agenda. And so we must build our own media, African-owned, African-run, and African-focused. We must fund Pan-African news agencies, satellite networks, and digital platforms. We must teach our children the true history of Africa, the empires of Mali, the scholars of Timbuktu, the architects of Nubia. We must remind the world that Africa was not discovered. Africa was always here watching, remembering, surviving, and now rising. I speak today not just to presidents and ministers, but to influencers, creators, students, and teachers. Do not repost propaganda. Do not amplify shame. Instead, amplify African brilliance, resilience, and sovereignty. Tell the story of the young innovator in Lagos creating AI solutions. Tell the story of the farmer in Mali feeding a village using indigenous methods. To tell the story of the Burkinab woman leading her community through courage and tradition. Let us flood the world with images of dignity. Let us speak of our wounds not for pity but for healing. Let us show our triumphs not for applause but for legacy. You see, narrative is not only about external perception, it's about internal belief. When a child sees themselves in a hero, they rise. When a nation sees itself as capable, it acts with courage. And when a continent claims its story, it shapes its future. That is the revolution we now need, a revolution of truth. Let this be the era where our children grow up knowing their heroes, speaking their languages, and believing in their continent. If they try to silence us, we will speak louder. If they try to erase us, we will write deeper. If they try to distort us, we will shine with truth. Because Africa is not a victim. Africa is a vision, and the world must hear it from our mouths. This is why I speak. This is why I will never stop. We will not allow our future to be written by those who profited from our past. We will write it ourselves boldly, clearly, and proudly. Africa, it is time we own our story. And with that, we step into power. My beloved people of Africa, today I want to speak about a wound so deep and persistent that it has shaped our economies, our decisions, and even our self-worth, economic dependency. From the moment we were politically independent, we were economically bound to outdated trade agreements, bound to unfair loan terms, bound to currencies that are not ours, bound to organizations that speak of development, yet write policies that ensure we never catch up. How can a man be free if he must ask permission to use the resources beneath his own soil? How can a nation stand tall when its wealth flows outward while its people go hungry? This is not just injustice, this is design. And unless we break this chain, Africa will always remain the richest poor continent. So I speak now, not just as a president, but as a son of the soil. Economic sovereignty is the next frontier of our freedom. We must stop begging for what is already ours. We must stop accepting the crumbs of the global economy when the feast was prepared with our ingredients. For far too long, Africa has exported raw materials and imported poverty. Gold leaves our ground and debt enters our accounts. Oil flows from our wells, but our people cook with firewood. Cocoa crosses our borders, but our children have never tasted real chocolate. Why? Because we were trained to extract, not to transform. To sell, not to own. But today I say this must end. The new Africa must refine its own oil, process its own minerals, and feed its own people. We must build the factories, trained engineers, invest in agriculture, and empower our youth to become creators, not just consumers. We must stop seeing foreign aid as a solution because too often it is a trap. Aid tied with conditions, loans written in invisible ink, partnerships where one party gains and the other remains stagnant. Let us be clear, true help does not come with hidden chains. And any investment that robs us of control over our land, our laws, or our labor is not a blessing, it is modern colonization. We must reject it. Instead, we must look within. The African Union, Ethiopia, Balas, SADC, EAC. These are not just acronyms, they must become vehicles for real economic collaboration. Let us trade more with each other. Let us develop a continental payment system that doesn't rely on external currencies. Let us support African businesses, back African banks, and protect African industries. Yes, the road will be hard. Yes, we will face resistance, but the generations to come must not inherit a continent that still asks for permission to prosper. We must lay the foundation now. This is why we in Burkina Faso are building policies that favor local industries. This is why we are revisiting contracts signed in secrecy and rewriting them in the name of transparency. This is why we are shifting from foreign dependence to regional cooperation and domestic empowerment. And to those who say this is risky, I ask, what has the old path brought us? Generations of assistance, and yet schools without books. Billions in aid, yet no water in our villages. Decades of advice from global financial institutions, and still we remain at the bottom. No, the risk is not in changing. The real danger is in staying the same. We must stop waiting for rescue. Africa is not drowning. Africa is being held down, and we are now pushing back. We will not be shamed for wanting control over our resources. We will not be labeled anti-development for prioritizing our people. We will not be silenced by sanctions or threats. Because the truth is this: economic sovereignty is not about isolation. It is about dignity. It is about self-determination. It is about finally stepping into our rightful place, not as perpetual borrowers, but as proud builders. Africa, we are not poor. We are mismanaged. We are not behind. We are delayed by design. But now the veil is lifting. And as we rise, we must remember, freedom is not given. It is taken, and economic freedom begins with the courage to say no more. No more exploitation masked as investment. No more aid that comes with a chokehold. No more being told how to run our economies by those who once ran our lands. We are ready, our people are ready, and the world must prepare to see an Africa that no longer begs, but builds. Not tomorrow, today, because the destiny of Africa lies not in the hands of outsiders, but in our hands. Let us take it, and let us build something worthy of our ancestors and our children. To my African brothers and sisters across cities and villages, deserts and rivers, from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, from the mountains of Ethiopia to the coasts of Namibia, I greet you with unwavering love and resolute pride. In all that I have spoken so far about sovereignty, justice, resource control, and dignity, there lies a greater truth that binds it all together. Africa's strength lies in its unity, not in borrowed voices, not in borrowed models, not in borrowed strength, but in the rich tapestry of our cultures, the brilliance of our minds, and the harmony of a people once divided by borders, drawn in foreign boardrooms. Now is the time for a continental awakening. And so I say this not just to leaders of nations, but to the hearts of every African. We must speak with one voice, for when Africa speaks together, the world must listen. We are not a charity case. We are not a market to be harvested. We are not a theater for proxy wars. We are a continent of destiny. We are the birthplace of civilization, not its burden. So today I call for the unshakable unity of Africa on the global stage, politically, economically, culturally. Let us stop negotiating from a place of weakness. Let us stop showing up divided at international summits, only to leave with nothing but applause and empty resolutions. Let us stop fighting each other while foreign entities reap the rewards of our division. Let us stop allowing foreign narratives to define who our heroes are and what our priorities should be and how we should govern. If the world wants to engage Africa, let it engage the whole of Africa. No more bilateral fragmentation, no more manipulative diplomacy. It is time for a united African front. A front that demands fair representation that
you are in Alexander.
Alex FM 89.1. Elevate your mind. The home of the community.
A front that no longer accepts that decisions about Africa are made without Africa.
And he's
Because
saying,
if peace is negotiated without us, then
you
peace is
alone
false.
are holy,
If
you
development is
God
discussed
are
without
the
us,
Holy
then growth
One.
is stolen.
And
If
I just want to
global rules are
welcome
written without
Christopher
us, they will always be
Wakinyolo
used
and
against us.
also
So we must
Mandla
organize.
Mangoba
We
Mandla
must build
Ntombela
continental
joining in right
institutions
there
that
on our
work,
Facebook page,
not ones
Victor
that sit idle
Mhabudi,
during our
and
people's
they are
suffering.
chilling with us
We
as
must
we are
invest in regional
about to close
diplomacy
the show.
and
But
continental think
Mfundisi,
tanks. We must educate our
my
youth
issue
in
is
Pan-African truth, not just colonial history.
just
And most of all, we must trust ourselves. For too long, we have doubted the strength of African leadership. We have looked outward for
before I
validation,
speak
outward for
about the
answers,
issues
outward for
relating to the youth,
affirmation. But leadership that bows to external praise is not
I
leadership,
attended a
it is
memorial
submission.
service
And Africa will submit
on
no
Thursday.
more to the African Union.
There's
Your
a young man
time to rise
called
as the true
Lungisani
continental
Muyeni.
voices now. You must evolve beyond protocol
The
and
Zulu,
procedure. You must
the
become the
Muyeni
shield that
Zulu and
protects our sovereignty and the sword that defends our
and
future.
Mapanga.
To
Those
ECO
are the families that
SADC,
maybe
EAC, you
aligned
must
to
serve the
this
people,
young
not the
man.
puppets of foreign interests.
From what I
To
hear,
African media, amplify
he was
African
shot.
truth. Let our stories be told by our own
and
mouths.
no one knows
To
who
our
shot
elders,
him.
we honor your fight for independence.
No one was arrested
To our youth, we
for
pass the
that
torch
shooting.
of Pan-African rebirth.
I know he will be
And
laid
to
to rest
the
in
world, to this,
KZN
we will
on
no longer
Sunday, the coming
apologize for
Sunday.
being African. We will no longer dilute
and also,
our demands to soothe your discomfort.
I
We
think
are
it was
not
on
here
the
to
24th.
replicate your systems. We are here to
There's
build
an
our
incident
own.
again,
Systems
a
rooted in
shooting incident
fairness,
that took place
policies born of justice,
20 Rousseau,
leadership fueled by
there
the
by the
will of the
bridge.
people, not the influence of
And
international
the young man
donors.
is actually related
Let the world
to
take note.
Pastor Mangoba Mandla Ntombela. Umshana wakhe, so to put it across. And we always have that to say our children will grow and become great men. You invest a lot in this child, the teachings that you invest in these children, and just to see them disappear in front of your eyes. And maybe many other families might have lost their loved ones. Many families.
Because if we do not tell our story, others will tell it for us, and they will not tell it with love. This is my call to every African youth holding a phone, a pen, a microphone. You are the new soldiers of this silent war. Fight back not with bullets, but with truth. Reclaim our dignity not by asking, but by showing. We are more than they ever told us we could be. We are the authors of the next chapter, and in this chapter, Africa speaks for itself. My beloved Africa. We must now speak of a subject that many fear to confront, but I will not shy away from it. I will speak it plainly because truth demands it. Foreign aid. For decades, Africa has received billions, no trillions in aid from former colonial powers, global institutions, and so-called development partners, and yet what do we have to show for it? If foreign aid was the solution, Africa would be the most developed continent on Earth. But instead, year after year, summit after summit, loan after loan, we are still told to be patient, still begging, still bowing, still borrowing. This is not aid. This is a cycle of dependency, and it is time we break the chain. You see, foreign aid has not been a gift, it has been a strategy designed to keep Africa submissive, to create the illusion of help while ensuring control. The money comes with conditions, structural adjustments, political reforms, economic policies that serve them, not us. They tell us how to spend it. They choose the consultants. They fund projects that sound good on paper but collapse when the cameras leave. And when we fail because the system was never designed for our success, they blame us. But I say today, no more. Africa must stop being treated as a patient on life support hooked up to foreign IV drips. We are not helpless. We are not incapable. We are rich not just in resources, but in people, in spirit, in solutions. And yet we allow others to dictate our future in the name of help. They offer us aid, but in return they take control of our minds, our telecoms, our agriculture. They offer us loans and we mortgage our children's future. They fund our NGOs and then write our laws behind closed doors. Is that aid, or is it a new form of colonialism? In a suit and tie, my dear brothers and sisters of Africa, today I turn your attention to a battlefield many do not recognize, but one that has perhaps shaped our fate more than we realize. It is not fought with guns nor with bombs. It is fought with cameras, with headlines, with sound bites and clicks. It is the war of narratives. For decades, the world has been fed a carefully curated image of Africa, one that portrays us as forever broken, forever in need, forever at war with ourselves. Images of starving children, corrupt leaders, endless suffering. They never show our inventors. They never amplify our thinkers. They rarely celebrate our victories. Why? Because the one who controls the story controls the perception. And the one who controls the perception controls the power. I say this without apology. Western media has become a weapon, a subtle, sophisticated weapon used not just to report events, but to shape opinions, influence policy, and undermine sovereignty. When an African nation rises, it is called populism. When an African defends his land, it is called militancy. When we challenge injustice, they call us radicals. And when we expose truth, they accuse us of spreading propaganda. But we must now see through these illusions. The narrative that paints Africa as incapable, as dependent, disorganized, or dangerous is not an accident. It is by design. It is a narrative that justifies interference, that keeps us in a box, that convinces even our own youth that success must look like the West. But today I say to you, we must break this mirror they have placed before us. We must own our story. We must reclaim our voice. And it starts with this truth: Africa is not what they say we are. We are not just rich in minerals. We are rich in culture, wisdom, and resilience. We are not a continent of conflict. We are a cradle of civilization and a beacon of untapped potential. But until we tell our own stories, the world will continue to misunderstand us, or people will continue to doubt themselves. This is why independent African media must rise. This is why our youth must take up cameras not just to document, but to defend. This is why digital platforms must become our battlegrounds, not for war, but for truth. We must amplify the voices of our farmers, our teachers, our entrepreneurs, our historians. We must show the world who we are and who we are becoming. Let me ask you this. Why is it that when Africa negotiates trade, it is described as begging, but when Europe or America does the same, it is called diplomacy? Why do they focus on our instability but ignore their role in creating it? Why are we punished for protecting our sovereignty while others are praised for doing the same? The answer is simple: they have the microphone. But now, in the age of social media, in the age of decentralized information, we too can speak. We too can build channels that reflect our realities. We can train our journalists to report from our lens, not through the eyes of foreign editors. We can create documentaries that tell our history with pride, not shame. We can write books, make films, launch podcasts, and refuse to be silenced, because the next phase of our liberation is mental. It is not just about borders or politics, it is about how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. No more should an African leader be judged by how well he pleases outsiders. No more should progress be defined by how closely we imitate Western models. We must stop seeking validation from institutions that have never believed in our success. Instead, we build, we define, we narrate. Let this be the age of the African storyteller. We must not confuse charity with sovereignty. Let me tell you what real help looks like. Real help is equity, not pity. Real help is partnership, not domination. Real help is when we are given the respect to lead our own development in our own way with our own values. Let me share a truth they rarely admit. Much of the aid we receive is recycled debt interest payments dressed up as generosity, and much of it is spent outside Africa before it even reaches us in donor salaries, foreign contractors, and overpriced consultants who don't understand our people. What we receive is a fraction of what we lose through capital flight, tax evasion, and illicit financial flows. Africa is not being helped. Africa is being looted politely, but the world claps because we appear grateful. I am not ungrateful. I am simply no longer willing to be silent, because every time we sign another aid agreement without scrutiny, we surrender a piece of our dignity. Every time we accept another loan without strategy, we dig a deeper grave for our independence. We must begin to say thank you, but no. Not because we are arrogant, but because we are awake. It is time we develop a new economy, one based on African capital, African innovation, African trade, and Pan-African solidarity. Let us redirect our resources towards ourselves. Let us trust in the brilliance of our people. Let us grow our own food, make our own medicines, build our own machines. Let us invest in ourselves, even if we must start small. We do not need aid that comes at the price of our freedom. What we need is vision, discipline, and unity. Let Burkina Faso rise as a model where we choose sacrifice over slavery, honor over handouts, and self-reliance over subjugation. And let every African nation know you can say no. You can walk away. You can choose a harder path now to avoid a broken future later. We must teach our youth that dependency is not destiny. We must create economies that are built not on charity but on courage, because only then will Africa be truly free. And I will repeat it for those in the back. Africa does not need saving. Africa needs respect. Africa needs to be left to build its own path without interference, without manipulation, without strings attached. And until we do that, aid will not empower us, it will bury us. We are not poor, we are plundered. We are not weak, we are wounded but healing. And now we are rising. This is not just a new chapter, this is a new declaration. Africa will no longer be the continent of pity. Africa will be the continent of power. And we will write that future with our own hands. Brothers and sisters of Africa, children of the Sahel, and all those watching across the globe, I greet you with the strength of our ancestors and the resolve of our forefathers. Today, I speak not just as the leader of Burkina Faso, but as a humble son of Africa, witness to her pain, her struggle, and now her awakening. For far too long, the nations of the Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, walked paths that were designed for us by others, paths that led us deeper into debt, into dependence, into division. And each time we tried to rise, our wings were clipped not by our own people, but by the very institutions that claim to protect freedom and peace. Ask yourselves why, despite decades of foreign aid, military bases, and international summits, do our people still suffer? Why do our children remain hungry while our lands are rich? Why do bullets still fly in our skies while we export gold, uranium, and oil? These are not accidents, these are consequences of a system that was never designed for our liberation. And so I say this enough. We did not come into this world to be ruled. We were not born to be managed. We are not colonies anymore. We are sovereign people, and sovereignty is not a slogan, it is a responsibility. That is why wave nations of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have come together under a new banner. The Alliance of Sahel States. This alliance was not created in boardrooms. It was not signed off by foreign powers. No, it was born out of the trenches of resistance, shaped by the cries of our mothers, and forged in the fire of our shared struggle. We realize that when one of us bleeds, we all bleed. When a bomb explodes in Gao, the tremor is felt in Ouagadougou. When terrorists attack farmers in Tilabri, we all lose our food, our brothers, our dignity. We are bound not just by geography, but by destiny. So what is the Alliance of Sahel States? It is a commitment, a pact between free nations to defend one another, to support one another, and to build a future that belongs to us. Not to Paris, not to Washington, not to the IMF, but to the children of Africa. Through this alliance, we are laying down the foundations of Pan-African self-defense, of economic independence, and of a cultural revival that puts our people in foreign interests at the center. We are coordinating our military forces. We are strengthening our borders. We are cleaning out the corruption and the puppets that opened the gates to occupation in the first place. But this is not just about fighting enemies. It is about building something new, a new Sahel, a new Africa, an Africa where our languages are taught before foreign tongues, where our resources are used to power our schools and hospitals, not skyscrapers in Europe, where dignity is not a privilege for the elite, but a right for every farmer, teacher, and soldier. To those who say, we are turning our backs on the world, I say no, we are turning our backs on hypocrisy. On exploitation dressed as friendship, we are not against the world. We are for our people. And we welcome any nation that respects us as equals, but we will no longer beg, we will no longer kneel. We have stood up and we are staying up. I speak today not to provoke, but to proclaim Africa is rising and the Sahel is leading. To my brothers in Mali and Niger, courage gives us strength. To the young people of the Sahel, you are the fire that no empire can extinguish. To the elders who carried us through storms, your wisdom will guide this revolution. Let this be clear. The Alliance of Sahel States is not a temporary reaction. It is the first brick in the house of our future, a future where we define our own security, where we manage our own economy, and where no child has to die for the profit of another nation. This is just the beginning. May the world listen closely. Africa is no longer sleeping. My people was. Let us speak plainly. Our greatest struggle today is not just against terrorism, nor is it merely about changing governments or holding elections. It is about something far deeper, something that touches every corner of our lives. It is the battle against dependency. Africa is rich. We are rich in gold. We are rich in oil. We are rich in uranium, lithium, manganese, cocoa, timber, and mines that can build the future. Yet how can a rich man go to bed hungry? The answer is simple. The rich man does not control his wealth. For decades, we have lived under a system where our resources are extracted, refined elsewhere, and then sold back to us. Where our policies are dictated by international institutions, where loans are offered with smiles but tied to chains, where foreign armies claim to protect us, yet our people remain unsafe. And our sovereignty is only written on paper. This is what I call economic occupation, a form of control more dangerous than colonial guns. You see, my brothers and sisters, a nation that cannot feed itself, cannot defend itself, a nation that depends on others for medicine, food, fuel, and even information is a nation always at risk of blackmail. They say, here, take our aid. And we are made to smile and say, thank you, even when that aid builds their influence and robs us of our independence. Let me be clear, the Alliance of Sahel States is not anti-West, it is pro-African. It is not about closing our doors. It is about standing on our own feet so that when we open our doors, we are not crawling, we are standing tall. We are not asking for permission to exist. We are reclaiming the right to decide for ourselves. And this decision begins with our economy. We must develop industries in Africa. We must refine our own minerals. We must create value in our countries before sending anything abroad. And if the international community truly believes in partnership, then let them invest in our ability to stand, not in their ability to dominate. The youth of Africa are watching, and they are no longer fooled by speeches full of promises and policies written in other languages. They want action, they want dignity. They want opportunities that don't involve drowning in the Mediterranean, trying to escape a continent that should be the richest on earth. And let us not forget, our dependency did not come by accident. It was engineered. It was written into the trade agreements. It was embedded in the so-called development loans. It was enforced through coups, puppet leaders, and media campaigns designed to make us believe that without help from others, we cannot survive. But we are not children. We are descendants of kingdoms, of Mali, of Songhai, of Masi warriors. We built cities when some parts of the world were still in darkness. We are not starting from zero. We are returning to greatness. This is why we are rejecting the mechanisms of control through debt control, through language, control through so-called security partnerships that destabilize more than they protect. We are beginning to build internal resilience, joint economic initiatives between our three nations, agreements to exchange resources without needing foreign currencies, training centers where African youth will learn to build, manufacture, and innovate right here on African soil. The dream is no longer distant. It is becoming real. And we invite our brothers and sisters across the continent to watch and join, not with empty speeches, but with bold action. Let me repeat this for the world to hear. The Sahel will not be the back door of foreign influence anymore. We will be the shield and the spear. We will be the architects of a new economic model based on cooperation, mutual respect, and African pride. Let those who have ears hear. Let those who once exploited us understand. The age of quiet submission is over. We are not rebelling. We are restoring what was stolen, restoring what was lost, and most importantly, restoring belief in ourselves. May the voice of the Sahel rise like thunder and echo across every corner of this continent. This is not the end of dependency. It is the beginning of freedom. To my brothers and sisters across Africa, to the leaders of proud nations, to the youth rising in courage and the elders standing in wisdom. The time has come to end the division that has crippled us for too long. We were not born divided. We were divided by lines drawn in Berlin, not in Bamako, Lagos, or Accra. Lines that separated languages, tribes, rivers, and even families. Lines that turned neighbors into strangers and strangers into enemies. And those who drew these lines, they knew what they were doing, because a divided Africa is a weak Africa. Today, when we try to trade among ourselves, we face barriers that don't exist when we trade with Europe. When we try to travel between African nations, we need more documents than we do to fly overseas. When we need help, we go to the West before we go to each other. But this must stop. This will stop. We must recognize a simple truth. Our future lies in unity. The alliance of Sahel states is only the beginning. It is not a closed circle, it is an open call. A call to Nigeria, to Ghana, to Senegal, to Chad, to every African nation that still believes in the dream of our forefathers, Nkrumah, Sankara, Lumumba, Nikure, and others. We must build one Africa, an Africa where the borders do not divide our hearts. An Africa where we solve our problems among ourselves, not in foreign capitals. An Africa where our resources serve our people first, not the companies that exploit us. My brothers, the West knows the power of unity. That is why they built the European Union. But when Africans speak of unity, they call us radical. When we speak of self-reliance, they say we are turning our backs on the world. When we stand tall, they say we are rebelling.
Whether that's just the rainy season, I should say the high mountain is actually long. But yeah, so I'm here sweating. The New York community.
Oh yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. Anyway,
how are you doing, brother? How's the weather there?
My brother, I must really say I'm together, man. I'm doing great good, man. And I'm just doing more good to be greater than that, man. All right. Anyway, Brother Charlie, let's get straight into it. Too many people out there who do not know who is Brother Charlie Asukile Williams. Just take us through the journey, the history. I know.
The last name is Mitchell, not Williams. Mitchell.
Yeah. Charles Asukile Mitchell. Yeah. Take us through your journey. I know you were born in Brooklyn, in New York City, but just take us through who is Brother Charlie.
Well, I would like to think I'm a servant leader. Meaning some people want to be leaders, but they don't want to be servants. I'm a servant. I started as a servant to our people, and I'm still a servant, even though I'm being put more and more into leadership positions. born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. American roots are steeped in South Carolina, Florida, West Virginia. Uh, so I have predominantly African genes, but I also have my my maternal grandmother's grandmother, Indigenous American, and I suspect on my father's side there's a lot more mixture because the side is kind of tend to be light skinned.
Take us through the days.
But
Yeah.
I'm African.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Charlie. I think we had a bit of technical glitches here. I'm trying to sort some things out here. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead, Charlie. Yeah. All right.
No, I just said that I'm African. That's it. Um, I've made no bones about it. I'm African. My experience has been an African experience. Uh, in the 70s, the late 60s, those who were students of Malcolm X, they formed something called the Republic of New Africa. So they came up with the term New African. So if you want to say that, you can say I'm a New African also. What it means is that because of this experience, and I heard you say slave, but we're not slaves, we're enslaved. So we don't like it when folks refer to us as slaves. From the Nigerian calling people Akata and things like that, we are not slaves. We are Africans that were enslaved. We have a history. We have histories because we come from disparate cultures, whether it's Igbo, whether it's Fulani, whether it's Khan or Shanti. We are a mixture of those people in the New World because we weren't allowed to, because of the enslavement process, we weren't allowed to go the natural course of our people. So they took us, and particularly here in America, they mixed us up a lot so that we couldn't speak the same language. Therefore, they were trying to curb us from revolting, which we never stopped doing. They were trying to curb us from revolting. So in the Caribbean, when they brought Africans over, in some places you have people from the same ethnic background because they took the whole batch. Yeah, so those people were able to communicate with each other. But within them and the Europeans American experience, they realized that that was a problem that they were having in the Caribbean. So to curb that problem of revolts and rebellions, they mixed up the different. So they might buy two from this batch that came from Nigeria, two from this batch that came from Ghana, two from a batch from the Congo. So they mixed up the people, thinking that would keep them unable to communicate. But our people still found ways to communicate because all African indigenous people have another language called the drum. So we were able to communicate through the drum and through our common cultural practices. So anyway, back to the New African definition, Imari Okello and others that formed the Republic of New Africa realized that we were no longer any one particular African group. We were a conglomeration of different African ethnic traditional governance and cultures. And so they came up with the term New African. So if you don't feel comfortable saying I'm an African because I don't know which particular parts my ancestors came from the continent, you can say I'm a New African.
Wow, great stuff indeed. Now, let's talk about Africa, Brother Charlie. From where you are, what is your assertion about Africa today?
My assertion about Africa today is my assertion wherever Africans are, not just on the African continent. African people are in a system, whether it's on the continent or other places throughout the diaspora, that we don't control. And now it is time. Our young people are screaming for it. Our young people are enamored with Gayori and Chiani and Goita, and they see that it is no longer just an ideal that it is possible that African people can take control of their resources and control their destiny. But we have to do it in the system, just like Trayani Goita and Kayori have created a system called the Confederation of Sahel States. We need the same type of system where we control the economics, politics, and culture of our communities, of our neighborhoods, wherever we are. So if we have a nation, that's fine. If we just have a neighborhood within another city, we need to control that neighborhood. Every other ethnic group and religious group controls the politics, economics, and culture of the neighborhoods, the nation, the state that they're in, and we need to do the same. But we're not doing that right now by and large. So we're in a sad state, but we're also in a very good state because we have the future to look forward to, and we see the potential now because of the Confederation of Sahel States. We see a good future, a great future that is possible, but we have to believe that we can do it.
What is
we have
it?
to believe that we can do it. We can do it.
Yeah. You spoke about President of Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traore. This is the president of the presidents of Africa. He's doing things quite pretty good. What is it that other presidents in other parts of Africa can draw or can learn from President Ibrahim Traore?
Well, first of all, let me because he's the youngest of the three, we focus a lot on Traore. Traore is actually not the president of the Confederation. I forgot what his Goito Chiani is actually the head, but we look at him because he's young, and most of Africa's current population is young. So he for them, for Africans worldwide, is something that is someone rather who is an inspiration. But what can we draw from them? One, that we need to control our own land. One, two, that we need to control the resources coming from our land. Three, that we need to throw off European ideas and ideologies and mindsets. Because for too many of us, the European mind is our primary mind, instead of the African mind. I have to get in. If you look at my background, most of my teachers, my jugglers, have always told us, have been in a battle for the last. Dr. Leonard Jeffries has been in the battle since the creation of Black Studies here in the United States. Professor James Small was in the battle before that because Professor James Small was one of the students that fought for Black Studies and for Black access to the colleges and universities. And Dr. John Henry Clark is like the grandfather of them all. And so they have been teaching us about this idea of a Eurocentric system, of Eurocentric value system, Eurocentric way of looking at things, meaning a European-centric way of looking at things, a European way of expressing how we view the universe or interacting with the universe, how we view what we call God in English. There's an African way, several African ways of identifying God in creation in the universe, and how we interact with them as human beings on this planet Earth. We have to get back to an African-centered, not Afrocentric, because that's a whole different ideology and educational pedagogy, but African-centered practice. You know, the way that we interact with each other as men, the way that even before I even say the way we interact as men, the way that we view what a man is, the way that we view what a man is right now is not manhood, especially for Africans who have no power in the places where they reside. It's what I call a biologically adult male. So physically we grow up, biologically we're grown up, but our cultural, manhood is derived by your culture. What are the responsibilities to the biologically adult male? What are the responsibilities to himself, to his family, to his God, to his community? That's what makes you a man. And right now, what makes us a man in many of our places is not what manhood is about. Manhood is about being able to provide for yourself, being able to provide for if you take on a wife and have children, being responsible caretaker of your community, watching out for elders who don't have anybody, watching out for youth that don't have anybody, managing the political system of your community. That's what being a man is about. And the values, interests, and principles that go into that are decidedly different between African people and what European people put as their values, interests, and principles. European values center on acquiring material, acquiring wealth. To hell with how it affects other human beings, to hell with how it affects animals, to hell with how it destroys the earth. That is the European value system. The African value system is diametrically opposed to what European values teach us. And so many of us, though, we're acting like Europeans, but in blackface. And we have to get back to our African value system, our values, our interests, and our principles. And one of our principles is that we do not bring harm, for instance, as part of Ma'at. Ma'at is a whole, M-A-A-T, if you want to look, if your viewers want to look it up. Ma'at is a whole ethical moral system with several principles. There's 42 declarations of innocence that we associate with Ma'at. It's a long list that if we had time, we can get into that, or I could come back and we could go into it further. But Ma'at teaches us a whole bunch of different things about truth, reciprocity, harmony, balance, order in the universe, justice. Wow. That is Ma'at. But then we have Ubuntu. Ubuntu is I exist because we exist, and we also exist because I exist. It values the individual, but it also values the community, because we cannot exist one without the other. You and I, as brothers, cannot exist on an island somewhere by ourselves. We need community, but the community also needs us. That's Ubuntu. So these are just two examples of African values, value systems that we need to be referred to and how we interact as Africans. And we need to stop playing the white man's game, stop playing, the Europeans' game, if you want to be more specific. We need to play our game, because we are the first human beings on this planet. For millions of years, not a couple of hundred years like the Bible says, or a couple of thousand years, for millions of years, there were Africans on the planet that dispersed throughout the world. And everywhere that Africans went, they built. But now you have a system that is about destruction. Dr. J said, death, domination, and destruction. And we need to get away from that, back into our own self, because many of us are ushering in our own self-destruction by following the European value system.
So on that note, Brother Charlie, then why is it still so difficult after so many years of the so-called independence? Why is it so difficult that Africa can't operate like a united front? Why is it still difficult that Africa, even up till today, is not operating as a united front, is not stepping its foot forward? We still have people getting into boats, trying to get to other countries, people running away, fleeing their countries because there's no democracy, there's no freedom in their countries. We still have people who are still dictators. Yeah. So how do we address that issue, Charlie?
There's no democracy in Europe. I'm here in America, and I could tell you there's no democracy. There's two parties here, and two primary parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, and they just had a Democratic primary here. Those who might, like I'm an independent, I'm not with either one of those parties. So the way this system is set up, to even work the polls as the people counting the votes and showing people how to vote and all that, you have to be either Democrat or Republican. So what about people like myself that are independents? What about people that are in the Green Party? What about people that are in the Liberal Party? Those folks can't work the polls. They can maybe work with doing greet people, but they can't work next to machines. So that tells you right off the bat that there's some hypocrisy. Why is it that only a Democrat, a person who is a Democrat or a Republican, can work immediately near the voting area? Because they want to keep control of the mechanism for voting. So there's no real democracy in America. So we talk to other things in Africa and say that they're problematic, like gash. Uh, for those, that's what they call it in West Africa. Gash is basically people always trying to, you go apply for a license, but they take forever, but because they want you to give them a bribe to put your papers through. But that goes on here in America. There's inspectors that come and inspect people property or their business, and they take bribes. Or that if you want your house to pass inspection, there's a bribe. Donald Trump himself is a master of working the bribe system, because especially when he started in construction, you couldn't get anything done with the unions unless you were hit, what I call in the hood, hitting somebody off with some bread. So there's a double standard and hypocrisy when it comes to African people and African nations, and that includes the Caribbean nations and Europeans. Europeans don't have this system that is totally corruption free. Europeans created the corruption, matter of fact, and they created the corruption in Africa. They pitted one ethnic group with the other, like in places like Rwanda, with the Hutu and the Tutsi.
Yeah.
They chose one group over the other and put them in school and put them in low-level managerial positions in the government and other places. And they set up the schism between the two ethnic nations to fight. And so now that they're out the picture, the two ethnic nations are still continuing the fight that they started, that Europeans started. And it's the same all over Africa and different places. They set up division between groups like the Igbo and other folks in Nigeria. They set up division. They give one preferential treatment over the other, and then that sets up a whole system of conflict within the peoples that should be uniting with each other, fighting against the real villain in the picture. But they did the same thing here. Malcolm X used to call them house Negroes and field Negroes. The house Negroes got better treatment. They lived in the house instead of in the coal shack. Some slept right on master's foot of the bed. Some had an attic room. Some had a basement room in which they slept in. They got the better scraps from master's table versus the field slave that got the guts of the pigs and the guts of the ox, the guts of the cow. And instead of getting wheat, they got the grits, the leftover chaff from the wheat process. So that when we eat hominy grits, that's what we're eating. We're eating the leftover chaff from the production process of the grain that it comes from. So they set up a system where one would benefit from being close to master and wanting to keep master's system going, versus the ones in the field that had nothing left to lose because they already were getting the worst of the worst. And we still have that to some degree today, even though the enslavement process is over. There's still field Negroes and house Negroes. There's people in the Black community that will hold up and protect the Democratic Party before they protect their own people and community. They put the Democratic Party first or the Republican Party first before they put Black people. So we still have that problem today here in America and in the Caribbean and in Africa.
So, can you take us through about what these two charismatic leaders stood for and what they fought for and what kind of America they envision? The glittering legacy of Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X. How would you describe their charismatic leadership and legacy? What they stood for and what kind of America and Africa they would envision today? And if they were alive, what would be their message to all the African people if Malcolm X was alive today? What would be his message, if you think of it?
Well, Marcus Garvey comes from Jamaica, so I just want to put that out there. But he did most of his work here in America. As his headquarters, he moved from Jamaica here to America. But his work was all over Africa, all over the African diaspora, and several colonies and on several islands in the Caribbean. He had chapters in Africa, and there's still chapters in Africa of the UNIA/VCL, African community. So Marcus Garvey's vision was to have one Africa, one African government. Malcolm X continued that. Malcolm X was an ideological grandson of Marcus Garvey and son of Elijah Muhammad, who was also a Garveyite. Meaning, when I say that, Malcolm's mother, Louise Langdon Norton Little, and Malcolm's father, Earl Little, were workers for Marcus Garvey's UNIA-ACL. So when I say grandfather, I mean in that sense that he comes from his parents, Garvey just parents to him. But his teacher in the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, was also, his foundation is in Garvey and UNIA-ACL, as well as the Moorish Science Temple, Noble Drew Ali. So both of them, I think, would agree that say we still need a land that is controlled, a nation that is controlled by African people, and Africa is that land, and Africa should be one nation with shared resources, shared capabilities for defense, shared knowledge systems. It's one of the largest continents on the earth, so it's a daunting task, but it can be done. I personally think that it should not use European systems. It should figure out how to build something that's modern with the African. See, most people call them tribes, but they're not tribes. They're indigenous African governance systems. They're systems created by Africans to govern themselves. And so the Shanti, the Yoruba of the different the people of Benin, people of the Congo, they have their own indigenous governance systems. And I think that any successful system is not going to use the European model. It's going to figure out how to give all those different indigenous governing structures equal space in a modern day government. And it's also going to make space for women, for female leadership, because there's just as the African system believes deeply in complementarity. So there's male leadership and there's female leadership in indigenous governance systems traditionally. But in fact, if you want to go back to what they call Egypt or Kemet, you see in many of the statues, the glyphs, you see that the woman has, in some places, Aset has a throne on the top of her head. That is related to the understanding of I was watching a video that you did earlier today. You asked the brother about patriarchy. It's not matriarchy, it's matrilineal, meaning that the power comes to the line of the woman, the line of the mother. So the woman is the seat of power. The woman is the seat of authority in our community. So there was a natural leadership component for women because women bring life into the earth, don't they? Don't women bring life to the earth?
Is it true?
Women,
yeah.
In most of our history, women have been the chief cultivators of the land. Women today are the chief cultivators of the marketplace. So there has to be leadership space for men and women. And the problem is in a lot of spaces, even in educational systems, too much male-centered activity and not enough focus on women and women's inclusion. And women have a whole different viewpoint that they could bring to the table that will enrich the African experience, enrich African governance. Women can tell us things about what it is, that women need to help keep our family going, because women keep our families going. Women keep our culture going, not men. Men sit around and drink beer or smoke a cigarette or smoke something else and crack jokes on each other and all kinds of things. Women keep our families going. And women need to have a place at the table of leadership to say what the family needs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go even deeper. The women also teach us and hold us to the values, interests, and principles of our community. So when we stray too far, somebody like Ya Santiwa or Njinga will come and tell us that if the men won't defend the community liberty from these devils, meaning white intrusion, then the women will stand up. Women remind us of what is important in our culture. Again, the values, interests, and principles.
Yeah.
And what violations cannot be tolerated. They remind us of that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why they need a place like this.
Yeah. Yeah, well put, well said, well packed, brother Charlie. Now, let's go back to our culture and our tradition. There are some parts in Africa whereby our culture denounces women to be an equal partner. Yes, we know that in some other villages in Africa, because of our culture and traditions, women are still not treated as equal partners. Women are still not allowed, Brother Charles, to own the land, to do the production, to do the farming. Some men will always refer to say the woman's place is still in the kitchen. It's part of our culture. It should not be questioned. A woman should only look after kids, and her place it's in the kitchen. So from time to time, people use culture and tradition as an excuse not to treat women as equal partners, as equal citizens, so to say. So what is it that we need to do to change the perception? Because some men would argue that this is part of our culture and tradition. It cannot be questioned. The woman's place is still in the kitchen. Tradition and culture must take its course. So what do we do to change the mindset of those men in those African villages who still believe that women are not equal partners, and they should not be treated as equal citizens? The mindset.
Okay, do you want the street smart answer? Or do you want the more presentable answer? I can tell you what women should do. Women need to close their legs and stop tolerating nonsense. If women close their legs and stop tolerating nonsense, a lot of the nonsense that men do will stop immediately. But on a more serious note, though, everything in African culture is not good. We need to take the best of African culture and discard that which does not serve us any longer. And that mindset does not serve us any longer. The mindset that some people should be treated as permanent servants or slaves, that mindset needs to go. Because I still see it in places. I still see it in West Africa, for instance, where people have gate boys. You know, grown men, and they call them gate boys. And they treat them like second-class human beings. I see it in the hotels in Ghana. The last time I went to Ghana, here in New York, let me back up. So here in New York, when we have hotels, right? And anybody can come in the hotel, whether you have whether you renting a room at the hotel, or if you're having a conference at the hotel, anybody could come in the hotel and go to the bar or sit in the lobby and read without restrictions. I went the last time I went to Ghana, which has been a while, I was at a nice hotel, and they would not let native Ghanaians come, and they had the gate security guard keep the young men from coming in to the hotel lobby, not going up to anybody's room, just coming into the lobby. And so we need to stop that mentality where we treat people because of their wealth or people because of their ethnic background, because they certainly do not treat white people like that anywhere on the continent of Africa. They do not restrict their movements. They let white people go wherever the hell they want to go. And that's something that we need to shut down. White folks should not have unlimited access to African people and African culture. There are things that Africans need to do that no white person needs to be present. There are times when white folks are very intrusive. That they feel they come into place, they could be one person there, and they feel like they need to be speaking up or they need to be in a leadership position, which is very arrogant. And that's the same arrogance they carry throughout the world and how they interact with Africans and Asians and Arabs. They feel like their way is the right way, that they know better, that as you would say, paternalistic viewpoint, that they think they know better than everyone else. When the only reason that they're in the position that they're in is because they have more sophisticated weaponry than everybody else. So women must have a place at the table. Patriarchy, or the idea of patriarchy, has to end. I know there are different cultural groups on the continent where some are more hunter-gatherer types, some are more agricultural types, and some are just kind of like modern day folks, going to a job. And some of that has to do with the paternalism or the patriarchy that you see, because men have to be in a certain position as to defend their people. And so I understand where it came from. Some of that, like I said, we need to discard the worst and keep the best of African traditions and culture. That's one of those that need to be discarded.
Yeah, and then another pressing problem here, Brother Charlie, is the issue of the LGBTQ community, whereby in Africa, I would like you to educate us about what does the African law says about LGBTQ communities, because we have seen in other parts of Africa whereby homosexuality is still a crime. We have seen people being sentenced to prison. In fact, this is happening all over the world, not only in Africa. In other European countries, homosexuality is still taboo. People still get brutally punished. In Africa, they get sentenced to prison for a minimum of 12 years being gays or being lesbians, because in an African culture, they say this is something that it's unheard of. So I would like you to make us understand, what does the African law says about the LGBT community, because this is something that now it has become a trend all over the world, whereby other people seems to have anger towards these LGBT communities. They are usually being attacked, arrested. In other countries, it's not allowed at all. What is your perception on this issue of the LGBTQ community, and what does the African law says about this?
So what you're talking about right now is a very multifaceted, right? Because African understanding of what the universe is, that it takes a man or the masculine energy and the feminine or the woman to make family. So that African culture is very scientific, and it's in order with what works in the universe. You cannot take one man and make a family, make children. You could adopt children and stuff like that. But you can't take a man and produce offspring. You can't take a woman and a woman and produce offspring. It takes a man and a woman to combine to make family. And therefore clan, so-called tribe, nation, etc. expands from that understanding. But what's going on is there's two things going on. One thing is respecting the humanity of the individual in their choices. Actually, there are three things going on. So the one is respecting the humanity of the person, regardless of what their sexual activity or philosophy or ideology, which extends just beyond the LGBTQ thing. Because we have some people that feel that way about Marxist socialism and democracy. And some people will kill somebody for that belief, right? Some people will kill because another person is not Islamic or is not Jewish or is not Christian. So we always, as Africans, respect the humanity of the individual. Again, Ubuntu. I am because we are. We are because I am. We respect the humanity of the individual. We do not. So the argument is not so much. Let me back up. See how I should say this. We have to remember that our brothers and sisters, no matter what their sexual persuasion, whether it's heterosexual or whatever, are still our brothers and sisters, and respect their humanity. So that's one thing. Citizenship-wise, as far as government, no government should obstruct the freedoms guarantee this people by law because of whatever their ideology or sexual persuasion is. So I don't believe in that. I believe that African tradition teaches us that the government should apply equally to everybody. So that's the second thing. But the third thing is that there is, and this is where the problem really is that nobody is talking about. There is an effort to feminize African men and masculinize African women. And so that's this big push with LGBTQ really affects us because they are putting information to ingrain this as normal traditionally in African societies and other people's societies, there were people that were bisexual, gay, and lesbian. We did not stop their humanity. We allowed them. We tolerated. I guess it might be a good word. Or we respected their humanity regardless of what they were doing. And in some systems, there's actually space in the spiritual systems for people, like in the Native Americans system, they call those people, in some systems, they call them people of two spirits. And they have a special space in the spiritual structure because they have masculine and feminine energy going on within them. They have a space for them. In Yoruba tradition or Ifa, which is the spiritual system, there's sometimes men that have a head, or the proper term. Their head is governed by a female Orisha. So there's some space for that. But again, the problem though is not that they are trying to normalize what is the exception to become the rule. LGBTQIA is an exception. It's not the rule. The majority of humanity, history has existed with man and woman creating nation, creating the family. Now they're trying to change that narrative to a narrative that two men can have children, two women can have children. That's not the normal narrative. That's not the narrative that's going to allow African people to continue on for another few millennia. So they're trying to change the narrative. They're going, like here in America, they have they're putting books in our school system, in what we call the elementary school, the very like kindergarten, first grade, second grade. They have books in the children's library normalizing LGBTQIA as normal majority behavior when it's actually minority behavior. They're encouraging young people to have sex change, which is a whole nother subject, because once you have a sex change, you have to take hormones. And so pharmaceutical companies stand to make a whole lot of money from people having sex changes. And once you have a sex change, you have to forever take hormones, because the normal hormones your body will produce, if you were born male, your body will produce male hormones. Female the same, will produce female hormones. But when you have a sex change now, you have to chemically introduce artificial hormones to keep the system from destroying itself, because the system will want to go back to the system, the male that it was born or the female that it was born. So the pharmaceutical companies stand to make billions of dollars going forward. This type of behavior, it continues to be encouraged and promoted in our community. But also, once you emasculinize men, effeminize men, you don't have to worry about the warriors of the community, because now the warriors are all women. And even before they started this big push with LGBTQIA, they've been introducing hormones for decades in our food system. They've been introducing soy, the estrogen. So it's in soy, it's in a whole bunch of other products that make up a majority of our foodstuffs. So for instance, there is a chemical that's in it. I forgot what it's, a pesticide or an herbicide, atrazine, and the company named Syngenta had atrazine as one of the components in one of its herbicides or pesticides. And so there were studies done. They went to a professor in California, Tyrone Hayes, and they asked him to do a study. As one, they actually had several professors nationwide doing a study on atrazine and effects on atrazine. And Professor Hayes found that atrazine, he tested it on frog baby tadpoles. He found that introduced atrazine to the frog tadpoles, it not only changed the behavior of the male frogs to not looking for the females to procreate, they were looking for the male frogs to procreate, but it also changed them actually physically. It physically changed them from male frogs to female frogs. And so atrazine was being used on all the major foodstuffs that the world uses, not just America, the world. So we're talking about corn, we're talking about wheat, we're talking about sugar, we're talking about rice, and we're talking about soy. And if you look at most of the processed foods in the world today, one or all of those are in processed food. And so when he came out with his study, and then other professors came, they tested it on other types of fish and birds, and their findings were similar. And so when he started releasing his study, Syngenta tried to shut him up, but they couldn't shut him up. And so what they did is they had a campaign to smear his name and to stop his speaking engagement. So if he had a speaking engagement, for instance, at NYU, they would have some people contact NYU complaining about him and demanding that he not be a speaker there. If he was up for a position at another college or university, they would exert pressure on the college or university not to hire him. This is what's going on, and there's not a whole lot of talk about it. And they're similar. I had to do research. I have came across at least one, but I lost my material, so I have to find it again. But there are similar chemicals being put in our food that are masculinizing women. But back to estrogen. When you look at, I was looking at some video from people, black folks and other folks from the 1930s, 1920s, and so forth. And you can see that physiologically they were different. They were leaner. Their breasts weren't as large. Men and women, their breasts weren't as large, and they were leaner. Meaning their fat, the content of fat or the body mass index was much smaller. They were leaner. They were healthier looking. But now, when you look at America, most people in America look bloated. Our people are very soft, look at soft curl like men. Men used to have, like when I go to Africa now, I look at the brothers, I see 60, 70-year-old brothers working the fishnets and pulling them in better shape than I am, lean, muscular. When I look at most of the young people here in America nowadays, they're very kind of soft and curved, they have guts. I'm not talking about people that were born what we call here in America big bone. We always had people that were born bigger than other folks and just naturally big. But now, a lot of people, you can see that their body structure is actually not amount of weight and the fat that they're carrying on. They have 20-year-olds and 10-year-olds, even with bare belly looking stomachs. And so we're being effeminized, we're being softened up, we're being fed an unhealthy diet, mental diet as well, mental diet and spiritual diet that is contributing to our own proclivity to self-destruct. And so when we see what's going on with our young people, we need to be concerned. Those of us that have any sense of what is happening before our eyes. There are some great things that young people are doing, but there are some very scary and self-destructive things that young people are doing. Engaging in meaningless sex, engaging in actually Dr. Africa wouldn't even call it sex because he said sex is life. And anything else is a deviation from what God intended. I'm not that hard because I believe sex for certain purposes terms of bonding and relaxation and other things. I'm not as hard as them. And a lot of the activity that African people are engaging in is very deviant. I was shocked to hear that in Ghana and other places on the continent, a lot of the Negro and excuse my French, but nigger stuff that I see happening in America is now on the continent. Strip clubs. When I went to, of course, there was prostitution. There was prostitution because uh, uh, they say it's the oldest profession, but most certainly the advent of the white man to America certainly Africa contributed to prostitution existing on the continent. But there was never strip clubs. Now I'm hearing about strip clubs and bottle service and all these deep and excessive activities that are being engaged in here in African America on the continent. So I'm very concerned, especially as more and more diasporans want to go back home to the continent, but they're not coming back with an African mind. They're coming back with a Western value, Eurocentric mind. So I'm very concerned with some of the things that are going on and that are proliferating here, but extending out to Africa.
Yeah.
So we have to shut that down.
Yeah.
It's taking us backwards. We need to be going forward.
Yeah. Another scary issue, another worrying scary issue here, Brother Charlie, is the issue of global racism. The issue of global racism. We are fighting white racism, and on the other side, we are also fighting black racism that is oftenly called xenophobia. Now, Brother Charlie, what in our African culture, what does our African law says about racism, tribalism, discrimination, and oppression from our African perspective of Ubuntu? And how should we address those issues?
There is no such thing as black racism. Racism is a system that means system. Racism is a system in which race or color or ethnic group is used to keep one group of people on top or one collective group, because white people are actually a conglomeration of several different European nations. But it's to keep white folks on top and other folks in the middle or at the bottom. Black folks are usually the one at the bottom. The darker you are, the closer to the bottom you are. But folks like light-skinned blacks, or blacks that look more aquiline, the aquiline white-looking nose, or Asians or Arabs, they could become honorary white people. You know what I'm saying? And back in the 19th century, early the 20th century, they had a saying: if you're black, you're black. If you're brown, stick around. If you're light, if you're white, you're all right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. So it was us kind of poking fun at what we obviously saw, and the African people are great for coming up with something like that. That seems kind of silly, but when you think about it, it's exactly what they see existing, and you put it in a way that was non-threatening to spread the knowledge of the understanding of it. But there is no black racism. Now, xenophobia means being scared or fear of the other. And so we could argue xenophobia. So the fear of the other is created because of racism, because there's a lack of poverty, impoverishment. And so if the white man is keeping 80% of the loaf, and Chinese and Arabs get 15% of the loaf, Africans are fighting for 5% of the loaf to survive. And so that poverty mindset of being the first one to get to that 5% is what's saying South Africans are saying, Nigerians, you can't have our part of the 5%. But it's still only 5% when white folks got 80% of the loaf. So we need to, and 80% of the loaf, of that 80% of the loaf that they have, almost 100% of it is from Africa. almost 100% of it is from Africa. But they have Africans fighting each other, whether it's ethnic nations within one nation or the whole continent itself, and the so-called Europe, the so-called nation states that exist. They have all of us fighting for that 5%. We're entitled to almost 90% more of the bread loaf. And so this is the poverty mindset. What they call, I don't know if they have it in South Africa. You ever heard the term crabs in the barrel?
Yeah, aware of that term.
The crowds trying to climb up the side of they step on top of each other, get onto the top. And actually, I don't think crabs do it as much as humans do, because crabs will actually stack each other until one can get out. Humans will pull you down to our level.
Yeah, the PhD. Yeah, the PhD.
They have us crabs in the barrel mentality, and we have to break this and see that it's in all of our best interests as Africans to work with each other, and that the problem is not the Nigerians coming into South Africa or the Ghanaians coming into South Africa or the Nigerians and other, Nigerians coming into other places. Like, for instance, they have this thing with the Nigerian scammers, but it was research that was done that actually showed that what people thought was Nigerian scammers was actually Chinese and Europeans running the whole scheme. And they might have been using Nigerians on the phone or Nigerians on the computer, but it was actually a non-Nigerian running the system. So we have to get away from these things that divide us as Africans and figure out how we're going to work together, because it's for all of our best interests to work together. Because as long as we keep divided, they can keep pitting us against one another and using us against each other for their benefit. And so that racism, that system, continues to exist as long as we buy into what they're feeding us, into what they're teaching us, into their thought system that we are inferior and not deserving and less than. We are incapable of controlling our own systems, managing our own natural resources. As long as we continue to buy into that system that says that there's something inherently wrong with us and therefore white people need to be in charge of superior, we're going to keep having the same problems. So we have to abolish it. We have to get to know each other better. That's why I'm here with you. I'm all the way here in New York City, and you're in South Africa. And a lot of times African peoples don't get a chance to interact with people from other cultures, from other nations, the way that we are today. So I'm happy to be here to talk to you. And hopefully maybe we'll get a chance to talk to some of your listeners.
Yeah.
So that we can really know each other, see how much similar we have with each other versus the differences.
Brother Charlie, I want you to take us through what I would call the white supremacy is on the rise, and it's part of racism. We have seen it before with the Ku Klux Klan and all of that. Now, they've resurfaced and it's spreading all over the world. White supremacy, as some say, they want to make America great again, but by the look of things, they want to make America white again, So as black people all over the world, as you would know, that black person, wherever she goes, is a suspect, is a crime suspect number one. So as black Africans, how should we fight global racism and global racial prejudice at all fronts against all forms of discrimination in the world? And do you also believe that tougher, stricter legislations will be the answer to address global racism? And do you think we should criminalize global racism and sexism as well in the world?
We don't have to criminalize it. It's already criminal. They might not acknowledge it as criminal, but it's criminal. Legislation depends on where. If it's an African-controlled country, that kind of makes sense. But in a place like America where it's not African-controlled, I don't think you could legislate, because legislation is supposed to affect two things. Legally, there's two things. There's de jure which is the common practice, and what's the other one? Sure, de facto. Well, one is what's right by law. One is what the law says, and one is what is the common practice. I forget the two terms right now. You can legislate what the law says, but if the common practice is racism, then it don't matter what the law says. The racism is going to keep on being practiced. But being said, what African people need to do is create our own systems. Again, politics, economics, and culture. African people need to control the land, their labor, and their resources. So, do what Traore and Goita and Chiani are doing. They threw out the European mining companies. They threw out the terms that were set with those companies and with the French government and other governments. They threw out those things and they created something that works for their people first and foremost. So they've been able, for instance, to take their countries from down at the bottom of the list of developed countries to the top 3, 4, 5 of the world's most developed countries in a short span of 2, 3 years. So if we take control of our resources, Traore has done some amazing things in the last year. He's built buses, sustainable buses, for the coach buses transported around the country. He's distributed tractor trailers and equipment to grow food. He's to take off those damn European white wigs in the courts. He will no longer wear those white wigs and robes and police uniforms and military uniforms are produced by Europeans and Asians overseas. He said we will use our own indigenous fabric and create uniforms based on our own indigenous fabrics. Do you see what that is? The indigenous fabrics itself, the weavers, the printers, the people that make the dye, that's employment. Jobs for people. Those are businesses for people. Somebody has to make the dye that for batik. Somebody has to make the dye. Somebody has to make the stamps that you stick the dye and stamp onto the fabric. And like a Shanti cloth, that's woven. There's a whole history and legacy of weavers in their community. That's employment. So when you take the normal structures and the ideology of your people and create your politics, economics, and culture with it, that's when you will be in control. And it starts with having a land base. You have to have land base for African people from which to operate. Any nation is only going to be as strong as its land base. So if you have no strong land base, then you're going to be perpetually weak. You're going to always be in a position of begging. You're always going to be in a position of crying about to the white man for aid. We have to have a land base like the Confederation of Sahel states from which to operate, and then all of the justice system, the military system, the educational system should be based in first teaching our young people our values, interests, and principles, and then teaching them skills that they need for technology, leadership, because leadership, you're not just born a leader. Somebody has to train you in what a leader does and the values, interests, and principles, and what you must not violate as a leader, that you must be a servant to your people as a leader, and it's not for you to stand on top of everybody else and make them work for you and bring you their wealth and you're rich with everybody else. And that's not what a leader is. A leader is only going to be as healthy and long lasting, or his or her kingdom is only going to be as long lasting as the community is healthy. If the community is sick, if the community is impoverished, if the community is uneducated, then your community, your kingdom or your government is not going to stand, it's not going to last long. So we as African people, there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of things that we've actually been doing, but we've been doing it for white people. Here in New York City, most of the middle managers and day-to-day workers in the city government, in hospital structures, etc., are people that look like you and me. But they actually keep it going, but they don't think that they're capable of being the leaders that African people need. So whenever I speak, I say to African people, you are the leaders that you've been looking for. You are the leaders that you've been looking for.
Yeah.
You are the leaders that you've been looking for. You know what the problem is. You know your needs and the needs of your brothers and sisters, your mothers, your aunties, your uncles, your grandparents. You know what they need. Who better than you to solve their problem?
Brother Charlie, here's I think there's a listener here from, I think it's from Uganda. Yeah, his name is Idaya or Idi, like former Idi Amin. He says, what is Brother Charles' thoughts and reaction about the Uganda-born New York candidate, Zoran Mamdani, a man said to be the first Muslim New York mayor? So this is a listener here. He said, what are your thoughts? What are your reaction about the Uganda-born African candidate, Zoran Mamdani, who's said to become the first Muslim New York mayor? And before, we have heard David Dickens as the first black mayor of New York. So now it's likely to have the first Muslim New York mayor who was born in Uganda. So this is the listener from Uganda. He wants to know, what are your thoughts about the Uganda-born New York candidate? Does he stand a good chance? Do you think he might do much better than his predecessor? Even better than Rudy Giuliani. So maybe he'll do much better than Rudy Giuliani. What are your thoughts?
According to what I've been seeing on the news and the polls, he basically won the Democratic primary that was recently held this week. So of course, if you look at that, he's doing quite well. Now, in the next round of votes is with the Democratic candidate, Republican candidate, and all the independents are going to be on the ballot. This thing that just passed was the primary with a bunch of people that were trying to run to get the nomination as the Democratic candidate. The Republican candidate was already locked down because there was no opposition to Curtis Sliwa, a conservative, racist guy here in New York City. So he's going to be the Republican candidate. Now Mario Cuomo didn't win the Democratic candidacy, so now he's going to win the Eric Adams, the current incumbent mayor, he's going to win
Eric Adams
as an independent because there was so much pushback on him because of the campaign that's being waged against him for the last basically 2 years. The last year has been most prominent. They've been building up a case against him the last 2 years. And Adams hasn't been doing anything that most politicians that preceded him haven't been doing. Meaning he's got certain people giving him connections, people giving him money, whatever. And he looks out for them. That's what I'm not saying that that's right, mind you, but I'm saying that's what's been existing. So he's been doing that he's been doing the same thing that people have been doing for years, for decades, for over a century that New York has been a city. But most of the pushback on him now is from his police policies and also from his connection for the quick pro he got from the arms man. Some folks call him President Trump. I call him Chump. Because Trump saw that there was an attack on him, and just kind of had his back, and kind of you wash my back, I'll wash yours kind of thing. So people are saying that he's letting ICE, which is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, coming to New York, when New York State is supposed to be a sanctuary. New York City is supposed to be a sanctuary city. New York State is not supposed to be a sanctuary state for support illegal immigrants. But Mamdani has a very good chance of winning because he said things that people want to hear. Now, a friend sent me something today that I have to about his father, and saying that his father's a Pan-Africanist. I don't know how much of that is true. Um, uh, as you and I both know the history of Uganda, they brought in Indians into Uganda. And as I said with the House Negro, Field Negro, in Uganda's case, Indians were used as House Negroes. And so when Idi Amin came in, just like y'all are in South Africa are trying to get back the majority of the arable land from the white folks that are the minority, that they own the majority of the arable land, and period. Uh, Idi Amin told the Indians that were in Uganda that they needed to give up some of that land and stuff that they got under colonialism. And when they weren't trying to hear it, he pushed them out of the country. I'm not sure what his father or his family coming out of that experience feels about African peoples. So I don't know if he's a Pan-Africanist. I don't know if he's a lot of times Indians, no matter where they come from, they might identify with their citizenship, like in this case, America, and other places is Trinidadian or whatever, or Guyanese, but they will always uphold Indian customs and traditions first. I don't know where he is, especially being a Muslim, where he falls on that. As far as the Muslim thing itself, it's a beautiful thing if he really is upholding the teachings of Islam. To be Muslim means to submit to the will of God, to respect God's other creation on the earth, right? To make your 5 prayers a day, to give alms to the homeless or to the hungry, with the other 5 tenets. It's a lot, 5 times a day, give alms to the poor, try to make your salat. If he's genuinely holding up the best of the principles of Islam, it would be a beautiful thing. But I don't know what how steeped in Islam he is. I don't know how steeped he is in his ethnic identity as an Indian. So we'll see. But what he's saying about affordable housing and everything, it sounds pretty good. I have to take a deeper dive into what his platform is before I can really make an educated comment on that.
I would like us to go back and talk about the 2 guys, our 2 fellow brothers here. David Dickens, who became the first black mayor of New York, and now we've got currently Eric Adams. Between David Dickens and Eric Adams, who would you say did his utmost best in terms of empowering, in terms of delivering to the poor, to the poorest of the poor, the people that we are talking about, the people that are going hungry, people that are in starvation, particularly in New York City? So which one would you say he has done his best in terms of empowering, the poorest of the poor in New York City?
Can't really compare the two, and I'll tell you why. Because when Dinkins was in office, zeitgeist, if you will, of the times was definitely different. New York was more polarized, meaning blacks, Jews, Chinese, Italians. It was more polarized. The groups were more at each other. You couldn't come in certain neighborhoods even, which is why we had a lot of protests during that time, because one case not too far from me in Howard Beach, a young black man, at that time Howard Beach was predominantly Italian, maybe Jewish, and at that time black folks didn't live over there. Now when I go over there, there's black folks, there's South Asians and all. Well, that wasn't there back when David was there. It was white folks there, and if you was a black person, you better be in your car or on a bus passing through. You're not walking around, because if you're walking around, people are going to step to you with baseball bats and ask you what you're doing in our neighborhood. So Dinkins wasn't even if he had the best of intent at that time, because of how polarized New York was, how impoverished New York was at that time. Dickens, even with the best of intent wouldn't have been able to do certain things. The time just wasn't right. Adams it's a different day today, so Adams seems to be doing more things. However, Adams is very problematic in terms of his. He's a former police officer, but he's not like he was part of the Blacks and law enforcement organization that started about at the time his career started, which was black folks in the police, getting more numbers in the police department and supporting each other. And there was a faction that was more black nationalist, more concerned with the well-being of the black community. And there was a faction more like Eric Adams, who are more protective, let's say, of the police. Like there's a blue wall of silence that exists in the police culture. Whereas if you're a good cop and you see another cop doing something that they shouldn't be doing, whether it's harassing young black men or black women, taking drug money, or in some cases, even in Dinkins' time, there was actually several organizations of police officers selling drugs, enforcing young black men like Larry Abdul. He changed his name later on to Muslim. He became Muslim. But
was it during the time? Yeah, was it? Sorry, brother. Was it during the times of the Supremes?
The Supreme, the Motown group, the Supremes.
No. The gangsters in New York City.
Oh, the Supreme Team.
The Supreme Team, yes.
On that time.
Yeah, it was.
The Supreme Team, yes. It actually might have even been before the Supreme Team. The Supreme Team was definitely part of that whole environment of drug selling and illegal activity during that time. Yes. But there was one here, I think, in the 75th or 77th precinct in Brooklyn. There was a group of police officers that were selling drugs, robbing drug dealers, and forcing young black men to sell drugs for them. And then up with Larry Abdul. Look up his name for 1 second.
Was it not, who's it, Miller? Is he still in, is it the guy who's still in prison even today?
Larry Davis.
Oh yeah, Harry Davis.
He changed his name to Adam Abdul Hakim. Larry Davis, that was in the 80s, right? He got the shootout in the South Bronx with police. And that's because he was being forced, him and some of the street people were being sought or forced by police in the Bronx to sell drugs. And then something went down and they wanted to beat him up and brutalize him in his compartment, and he fought back. And that led to the shootout and him running away. But refer to it. Actually, I'm sending it to you right now. I'm sending it to you right now in the chat.
Yeah.
This was not uncommon during that time. The same thing in California. You know, there's a famous rapper now called Rick Ross. And he's based his persona is a conglomeration. His name is borrowed from Freeway Ricky Ross, that was involved in the selling and explosion of cocaine in the form of crack in the LA area, Los Angeles area. He took that name, but it's a conglomeration. See, America has this fascination with the criminal, which comes out of, again, that poverty mindset, because we see those with wealth and those with positions in politics, etc. We see them when we know that they're crooked and that they're exploiting the people and that they're abusing citizenry. So America has developed this fascination with the criminal that is steeped in the idea of the criminal sticking it to the quote-unquote man, you know, robbing his trains, robbing his banks because the banks are taking the money out of the community and not contributing. America's developed a fascination and love affair with the criminals. However, what's happening in the black community now is the fascination with criminal has extended to making it okay to destroy the people, which is where it's going to see the criminal. When it was John Dillinger and other folks, they were sticking it to the man, right? Proponent of what sticking it to the man, and also providing drugs and alcohol for regular everyday people. So people looked up to them. But now today, in our community, drugs, Molly, OxyContin, whatever, our people are the people that were the once been revered as criminals. They're actually now, and they're still being revered as criminals. They're actually now not sticking it to the man. They're destroying us. So we have to get away from this admiration that we have for criminality, because the criminality is destroying us. And with different technologies and things that we have, there's no reason today that we can't organize as a collective, just like our brothers organized into the gang structure, whatever, and use that for the benefit and protection of our community. In fact, two of the most well-known gangs, at least two of the most well-known gangs in America, the Bloods and the Crips, was founded to protect the black community. Did you know that?
Yeah. Another worry, this is another important story here. The latest crackdown here, Brother Charlie.
So hold on, before you get away from that, Brother Muntu, let me just say this. Most folks see the Bloods and the Crips and they don't understand why the Bloods and the Crips were formed. Bloods stand for Black Leaders Overcoming Obstacles and Oppression. That's what Bloods stand for. Crips stands for Community Revolution in Progress. So this is black folks. When black folks came from the Midwest and the South to the Los Angeles and in California, they had to form organizations of young people to protect themselves from the white mobs that were attacking them. So that's how the gangs started forming. But the gang formation in itself is a corruption of African society. It's natural for young men and young women to form age groups. The problem with the gangs is that the elders are not nurturing and teaching the age groups as what's in our tradition is supposed to occur. The elders are supposed to take the young men and the young women, the elder women, the young girls, the elder men, the young boys, and train them how to take care of themselves, or whether it's hunting, gathering, whether it's taking care of the house, whether it's how to have, how to handle conflict with your wife, whether it's your role in the community as a man. The elders took the age groups and nurtured them and trained them how to be men and trained them how to be women. The problem with the gang structure is the elders of the community that have no right, that have the various interests and principles of the African community at heart, are not involved in the process. And so it becomes a corruption, whereas the gang leaders use the young men to build themselves up. And it don't matter if the young men get killed in the process or get on drugs in the process or even kill their own family members in the process, as long as the young men are doing what they need to build up their wealth. And that's the problem. So I'm sorry to go to your next question.
Yeah. My next question was the issue of the crackdown and the issue of the crackdown on black immigrants coming to America. What does this mean to black Americans? What is happening lately, where the brush head billionaire president Donald Trump has issued a traveling ban against Africans traveling to the United States. And then there are also countries that he has banned, including the Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, quite a number of countries, around about 38 African countries that have been banned to travel to the United States. What does this mean to the African diaspora, to the African people, where the travel visa now has been halted? What does it mean to African and to black Americans in America? And we've also seen the crackdown on black folks. Even there were some Latinos as well. There was crackdown on Latinos and other nations. Are black Americans expecting this to happen to them as it happened to these other black nations, the Afro Asian nations, the Latinos, the crackdown where the National Guard, for the very first time in the history of America, where the last time it happened, I think it was during, I think when was it, in the 60s? The national protest that we saw where the National Guards were unleashed. So this is for the second time. What does it mean for the black Americans whereby the National Guards have been used in this protest? Is Donald Trump trying to punish those states that didn't vote for him? That's why he's going after this visa ban?
Donald Trump is definitely trying to punish not just any state that did not vote for him in mass. He's trying to punish anybody that was against him. He's a very vindictive and petty little man. That's why I don't. Why I do what I do. So when President Obama was president, we noticed, those of us that paid attention, that they did not call him President Obama. They just called him Obama, which was disrespectful to him. I didn't agree with what he did in a large sense. It was nice to see a black family in the White House, but he to me was just a black face carrying out the white agenda. But as far as like media and presentation, and this is why I call Trump, because any other president of the United States, when in the media, they always say President such and such, President Hoover, President Reagan, President. Obama was the only one they just called Obama. So that was a subtle way of just being disrespectful to him, and all the media outlets did it. Trump, they call him President Trump, or 45, or some people call him the Orange Man because his hair and his skin was orange. Now he's kind of modulated.
Yeah, some call him the brush head president.
Yeah, but he's actually, I noticed that he doesn't use as much orange in his hair. His hair's actually looking more blonde these days. He's not using as much. He's not using as much of that orange skin tan stuff that he was using. So he looks almost like a human being, or a human being can look. I call him Trump. I know his history. I know his history as a builder here in New York.
By the way, he comes from Queens, eh? He comes from Queens.
He was born and raised in Queens. His grandfather is from, I forgot which country, I think Austria or somewhere in Western Europe. His grandfather was in California during the gold rush, but previous to that, he was also in Alaska. His grandfather was not, but you might say he's a procurer, meaning he could get alcohol and women and stuff, but he actually owned brothels, his grandfather. His father inherited that money, and his father went into real estate and construction and property ownership. And him and his father, they had properties out in Queens where they would not allow black people to live, rent apartments. And so much so that people actually have filed discrimination lawsuits against him and his father. Donald Trump's teacher was the lawyer for the mob, Roy Cohn, C-O-H-N. He was the lawyer of his generation for the mob. So Donald Trump pictures himself somewhat in this as a mobster, even though he's not saying it. He pictures himself in that idea of the mob boss, the boss of bosses. You can't tell me nothing. That's really what's in his mindset.
Yeah,
deeply.
The real cowboy.
Deeply ingrained in his mindset. Yeah, he feels that loyalty. You must be loyal without question to him, and if you're disloyal to him, then you need to be obliterated. And that's the mindset that he's taken and going against the attorney generals and other folks that filed lawsuits against him and found him guilty of 34 felonies. I mean, this is the only president that was elected that I know of in my lifetime in previous history study with 34 felonies going into the campaign. 34 felonies. That's I never heard of a president of any country that had 34 felonies and was elected. But these are the times that we live in. So when they say, they used to try to say when Obama was elected president that we're in a post-racial America. We are not in a post-racial America. President Trump was proven, or President Trump, or Trump as I call him, is proven to us that we are not in a post-racial America or a post-racial society. Racism definitely exists. But to the immigrant question, America has always been trying to exclude non-European immigrants, from the Chinese back in the 1800s and the racism that they dealt with, to more recent times, the Haitians, the Vietnamese during the 70s. America brought the Vietnamese that worked with them, just like they did the Syrians in modern times. They worked the Vietnamese that worked with them in the Vietnam campaign over here and allowed them to get citizenship. Africans, not just from the continent, but Africans from Haiti, Africans from, there are a lot of Africans in
from the Caribbean islands as well. Even from the
South
Caribbean.
America, there's a lot of Afro-Latinos coming from there. But Africans from the continent, they would go to Europe seeking jobs or better situations, or they would take a boat and go to the Caribbean and Central South America. They either stop there or they try to come up to the United States of America, like most of the other people from Latino people. They would come up with the Latino people in those, migrate. I forgot what they call it. The guys that bring, they have the whole underground economy where they bring people. They carry people from other countries up to Mexico and into America. But so I'm concerned with it. I'm concerned with the immigration policy because I see when he talks about birthright citizenship came into question in the Constitution when it came to African Americans or formerly enslaved Africans in America. The only mention of birthright citizenship in the Constitution is in the 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment that apply to us. So when he says he's trying to abolish birthright citizenship, so-called just for the immigrants, I'm wary because it says he's doing it to them today, or what's that old saying? If they come for you in the morning, they can come for me at night. This says he's using that against so-called illegal immigrants, because this land is their land anyway. Most of America was indigenous people's land, and certainly New Mexico, California, Texas, and those states along the border with Mexico, those were originally part of Mexican territory. So how can you talk about illegal immigrants when most of that land was theirs by right? But I'm concerned that current campaign that he's using against illegal immigrants can be extended to African Americans and deprive us of our citizenship. I'm concerned because not enough is being said about Haitians and brothers and sisters from the continent and brothers and sisters from the Afro-Latino population coming up here and how they're being treated. It's not just the more Indian-looking immigrants or so-called illegal immigrants that are being mistreated. They're African people, African people being mistreated that lot as well. He's doing a lot of things like he's sending people instead of if you catch somebody that's a quote unquote illegal immigrant, you're supposed to send them back to their host country or to their country they have citizenship in. And if for whatever reason if there's a threat or something on their life, they can get they're supposed to be able to get refugee status because if they can argue the claim that if they go back to their native country that they will be put to death because maybe they current administration party and their party when they were there were clashing or whatever. But they can make a claim that their life is in danger by sending them back home. That's what gives some sort of refugee status. But what's happening is a lot of people are not being sent back to their native lands and not being given refugee status, and they're being sent somewhere else where they can't communicate with anybody. They can't communicate with their family members. They can't communicate with the lawyer to get legal help or legal representation. They can't communicate with their children. Children are being separated from the parents. Uh, Apparently, one young man, he went out. His father thought he was at. His father thought he went to school, went to high school, and it's like days later, the father found out that he was actually in ICE detention. It's not supposed to happen like that. That's some brown shirt Nazi Adolf Hitler type thing. You just grab people off the streets, no due process, no explanation, no even time to give them to turn themselves in. No, know that they have X amount of days. Even Diddy, they allowed Diddy to turn himself in. Epstein, they allowed him to turn himself in. Trump himself, they allowed him time. They didn't give him what they call the perp walk. They didn't grab him off the feet, even though what he did was certainly it wouldn't have been out of order for doing what he did if they had grabbed him from wherever he was. They gave him the dignity of giving him time, his representation, to get himself together, to help get his family together, and turn himself in, so that they're grabbing folks literally. I've seen video where a woman is driving with her daughter, and they surround the vehicle and bump out the window and pull the woman out the vehicle with her young teenage daughter traumatized. That is not what America is supposed to be about. That is not what, we talk about democracy. Is that democracy or is that fascism? Is that democracy or is that fascism, brother?
It's fascism.
You're grabbing people in the night, pulling them from the jobs, pulling them from the car, young, old, or no matter what. Don't let their family contact them. This is not, I have a lot of problems with what's going on in America in general. But this particular period is very, very, very troubling. We all should be concerned, if not outraged, about what's going on.
So, Brother Charlie, then how does America find itself in this situation? Many people always thought that the Democrats were much better than the Republicans. Coming to the race factor here, what could have happened? Is it the race factor where we saw the Vice President Kamala Harris not making it through the cut? Was it a race factor, or was it because of the Democrats' stands in supporting Israel, or was it the race factor here for Kamala Harris not to make it to the Oval to the White House?
There's a few different factors. One is the overall factor, and that is racism. America has always had a problem with what to do with non-European peoples or non-white peoples. At one point, some of the people now considered white were considered non-white. Italians, Irish, Polish. The white Anglo-Saxon Protestants didn't look at those people as white people. It was only in the last century or so when those people stopped being accepted as white people. So you want to talk about xenophobia and fear of the other? America is the avatar for xenophobia.
Mm-hmm.
America has always pushed this narrative, white supremacy, which is a fallacy that white folks are not supreme, nothing about white culture is supreme. White culture and white culture and capitalism, man, that the masses labor for the benefit of a few and the wealth of the creation of wealth for a few. But the problem with America is that instead of being outraged at capitalism, white folks, and black folks too, feel that they can somehow achieve the pinnacle of success that so-called wealth is. So what I say is it's not a lot of people. It's not that they don't. It's not that they're against oppression. They're against being the one that's oppressed. You understand? They're against. They don't mind oppression if they're the one on top, but if they're the one on the bottom being oppressed, they don't like it. So a lot of folks in America, instead of saying that we need to abolish this system, come up with one that's more inclusive. They keep the system growing, and that includes black folks. Like I said, a lot of us. See, you mentioned black racism. The only black racism that black folks have is wanting to be a part of this system and helping the system to. There's no reverse racism against white people by black folks, because everything that most black folks do keeps this system running. Therefore, we're racist against ourselves, not one particular ethnic group or the other black folks, against all black folks here on this continent, here in North America, there in the Caribbean, etc. Everything that we do to keep the system going keeps our people down everywhere that they are. But back to America, what's wrong with America now? I think the best way for me to kind of help us understand this is to look at an organization like the KKK.
The Ku Klux Klan.
The Ku Klux Klan, as it was structured, as it developed in the 18 and 1900s, in every town that it exists, right? The leader of the clavern or the local, whatever they call the local group or club, whatever, the leaders were always the wealthy people, the wealthy people, or the politician, the mayor, or the person that owned the most land in the town, or the person that owned the local the grocery store, the people with money. But most of the followers were poor white folks. And it's the same thing with Trump. The leaders of the Republican Party, the leaders of MAGA in particular, are all rich white men with property and power. And the people that are following them are the people that don't need to be following, the people that actually should be allied with black folks and other folks that are struggling like them. Most white folks in America right now are struggling. Most young people are moving out of the house in their 30s. Young people are getting married later in life in their 30s. And this is in the white population specifically, but it's going as it affects white people, it affects all of us. Most young white folk are frustrated because they went to school and now they have those that went to school have massive debt, and they're not finding job skills in which they went to school, and they're not finding any jobs really, because most of the jobs that pay well or would have paid well before they were shipped out to other countries where American capitalists can exploit the labor. They're shipped out to India.
Yeah. Oh, Brother Charlie. All right, we catch Charlie. Yeah.
They're shipped out to China where there's a surplus of over 1 billion people actually trying to survive. So the people in it, they don't have jobs that could help them to afford a house or even an apartment. Most white folks, average white folks, cannot afford an apartment by themselves. I've had top co-workers, young white people. They had roommates. They have one apartment, maybe it's a loft, in an open space, and they make makeshift rooms where they build walls out of rock, or they make walls with blankets or something, or curtain rods or something. 4 or 5 in a room to pay the rent. 4 or 5 in an apartment to pay the rent. There's white folks that have a two-bedroom apartments, and they share the bedroom. Like one works in the daytime, one works at night, so they're in one bedroom. And the same thing is happening in the other bedroom. So they're sharing the bedrooms. White folks cannot afford to live in America anymore, and instead of allying with those who share the same problems and concerns, they think that these immigrants are taking the jobs. That in actuality, the immigrants that are coming and taking the jobs, that none of these white folks want to take the jobs that these immigrants are taking. And they wouldn't take the pay that the immigrants are taking. The construction jobs, most young white folks don't want to do construction. The restaurant jobs that the immigrants from Central South America are doing, Most white folks would not do a busboy, the dishwasher, sous chef, um, uh, throwing out the garbage, porter. Most white folks are not going don't want to take those jobs. Most white folks don't want to work in the flower industry or grow food and be migrant workers for the food industry. You know, the agribusiness is built on, you know, as one crop is going out of season, the workers move on to the next farm or to the next state where another crop is being, say in this one crop in one they might be growing tomatoes, in another state they might be growing peaches and plums or oranges. So the migrant workers move with with the seasons and with the crops that are being grown. Most white folks haven't been doing that since the early 1900s. Most white folks don't know nothing about farming, and they will not take those jobs. But folks like Trump astutely use them as the scapegoat, as the boogeyman in the house, if you were, to say that this is see, your problem is not us rich white folks. Your problem is these immigrants coming and taking your jobs, and there's no jobs for them, no jobs that they would want to take, and no jobs that pay anything that they would want, or not even want, that they need, that they need to pay for rent, to pay buy food and groceries, to put their children in daycare so that they can go to work, to get the children in a good school or in programs that's going to enrich their lives. The white folks are frustrated, and Trump has capitalized, Trump and his ilk has capitalized on that feeling amongst poor whites and Latinos that think they're white, and that's how he's in the position that he's in now.
Wow. Now, here's another very worrisome issue here, Brother Charlie. What drives, we earlier on you alluded about the Triple K, the Ku Klux Klan. They are still alive and kicking. Now, I want to know, take us into confidence as to what drives people to become extremists. What drives people to hatred? And what drives people to commit domestic terror attacks in America? And what drives them to hate? And what drives people to become extremists?
People, you talking about white folks?
Yes, I'm talking about the white folks. Yeah, the Triple Ks, the Ku Klux Klan, and the other white folks who are very extremist, particularly those who are in pursuit of the white supremacy. What drives people to become extremists, particularly white folks, and what drives white folks in America to have hate against other nations? And what drives white fellows to commit domestic terror attacks amongst the fellow citizens?
I use interest and principles as a big part of it. Again, as I just laid out to you, white folks, or the average white folks, are frustrated because they don't see a viable future for themselves. So they've created different things, or they've promulgated, not necessarily created because they've already in existence in some form or another. So there's been a rise of white nationalist group. They don't call themselves hate group, they call themselves white nationalist group. They believe that America was built for white men, even though it was built for white men, but it wasn't built for most white men. It was built for white men with property and power. And most white folks think that includes them for some reason that befuddles me. So they think it was built for white men, and they think it was built by white men. Now, the first one I already told you, it was never built for all white men. It was built for white men with property and power. Now, and it definitely wasn't built by white men, because most of America's infrastructure was built by my folks, so-called African in America. Most of America's infrastructure was built by us, and then furthered by Chinese, Italians, and others that came in later. See, most of America's population of European descent from non-English or English territories did not come with the founding fathers. Most of those folks came in the 1800s. They came in the 1800s. So again, Italians, Irish, Jews of all nationalities, Polish people, etc. All of everybody aside from the Dutch was here, some of the French were here, English was here, and the Spanish were here because the first two colonizers on the world stage are Spain and Portugal. So we have to understand that Spain and Portugal started the colonization process by Europeans after being taught by Africans and Arabs, aka the Moors, the science of navigation and the sciences of sanitation and other things. They took that knowledge and they used it to explore the world and colonize the world. So if you're not Spanish, Portuguese, French, Dutch, or English, he wasn't considered really a white person in the founding of this nation. It's only in the later 1800s that these other folks that I already mentioned were included in the white and what we call white today. But they think that they really have bought they've drunken the Kool-Aid, as we say here in America. They really think that this so-called American dream was meant to include them when it was not meant to include them. It was meant to actually exclude them. And much in the way nowadays that they have honorary white folks called Chinese or Arab, those white folks, the Italians and such, now they're honorary white, so they get included in white. So they think that it's meant for them. It was never meant for them. And so hate and resentment that they feel by being impoverished and in a situation that most of us Africans that have been on this continent have been in since we were brought here, and where we find a way to cope with it and not hate. They come from a people's value system in whose value system hate and xenophobia and other things is okay, because again, as I said, European collective value system is domination, destruction, and death. European collective value system is that everything and everyone is an object for you to collateralize on to build your wealth and make yourself rich. And so that is what we see in today being manifest, the frustration with not being able to get the wealth that we were promised vis-a-vis the American dream lie that was told to us.
Yeah. Finally, on that note, still talking about the American dream, let's talk about the infamous American dream of the former civil rights leader, Martin Luther King Jr., when he said, "I have a dream that one day my children will live in a country whereby they will never be judged by the color of their skin, but they will be judged by the context of their character." The Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, has it come alive, or is it still a long way to go? I have a dream, Martin Luther King, that one day my children will live in a nation where they will never be judged by the color of their skin, but they will be judged by the context of their character. Is it really happening, or is it far too fetched, or is it still a long way to go? The Martin Luther dream.
What I would say is that today, more so than ever in America's history, people of African descent and people of other cultures are actually communicating with each other more than that. But they still haven't had the serious, hard conversations, but they actually have more interaction. Back in King's Day, people were more segregated, and the only interaction between white people and other folks was at some sort of a servant facility, meaning the Chinese that owned the stores, they went to their store and that was their interaction with you. Or if you were a Chinese or a Native American or African American, you only interacted with them in a servant capacity of some type. There wasn't a real in mass dialogue where now young people of different persuasions can and do interact with each other more. But it's not a post-racial society. And King also in that speech talked about a check that was due to his people. A check is due to African Americans for the work that we put in to build this infrastructure, to the work that we still put in to build this infrastructure. There would be these devices that you and I are on right now. Most of the intellectual property that went into creating the cell phone, the computer screens, the language protocols, the call waiting, the internet itself, the streaming of knowledge over data lines. Most of this was created by African people, but African people, in particular the creators of these things that should have had the patent, they don't enjoy the wealth that they should have been getting, the wealth that Steve Jobs has, the wealth that a Gates has. Most of the folks that created these components that should have been intellectual property patented to them, reached out to other folks or companies, and they should have had their wealth. It's most of it created by us, but we don't enjoy any wealth derived from its creation. So America is still in a way separate but unequal. And the King also said he feels that he's trying to integrate his people into a burning house because he looked at the value system of America and saw how morally corrupt it was and how it did not live up to the all men are created equal, endowed with inalienable rights. And amongst these, truth, justice, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He saw that all those good things, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence that America said it prescribed to, was not being given to his people and not even being given to most white people. And so he said he feared that he was integrating his people into a burning house because he and most of the folks from his generation did not intend to leave their communities impoverished and move into white stuff. They wanted parity. They wanted equity. They wanted if we're both paying taxes, my school should look as good as your schools. My community should have the services your community has. That's what he wanted. He did not want black folks to abandon their communities and whiten.
Okay.
And that's what I think he was talking to us about.
All right, Brother Charlie, just in 5 seconds, I think time is pressing on us here. What a fascinating interview. Finally here, Brother Charlie, tell us, is Donald Trump making America great again, or Donald James Trump, he's trying to make America white again, not great again? What's your thought?
Well, I put it to you like this. Most white folks, consciously or unconsciously, when they say make America great again, they're talking about making America white again. America has never been white. America has never been white. America and the rest of the white world are scared because they have a zero birth population rate. They're not making enough, they're not producing enough children to keep their numbers at the current levels. In fact, it's been declining as their population is more older people than there are younger people in the white population around the world today. So that's what they're talking about. They want to make America white again, but the truth is that America has never been white. And the world has never been a white world. See, we need to, you're a media person, so in your practice, I'm gonna ask you, brother, to do some things. When you refer to Africa, do not refer to Africa as the global south, and do not refer to Africa as the third world. Because when you say third world, what's the first world? When you use that framework, the white world is the first world. When you use global south, you're saying that the global north is Europe. But if you looked at there's a map, I want you to get a map called the Peterson projection map. When you look at the map of the world and look where the equator is, most of the world Most of the world above and below the equator is folks that look like you and I, folks that look like Arabs and Asians.
Yeah.
So we are not the global South. We are the global center. So you and your audience, don't refer to us as the third world. Definitely not. If you're going to refer to us as anything, refer to us as the first world, because we are the first world. We are the first civilization. And refer to us as the global center, because we are the center of the world's people and population. We are the majority of the world's population. We are the majority in terms of landmass of peoples of the earth. So Europe is about this big. Europe and white people are about this big on the map of the world. So the rest of the world is like this big, with black folks and other indigenous nations. So let's refer to us in our language and in our mindset, and our language will help us to change our mindset. We refer to us as what we are. We are the first peoples that God put on the planet Earth. We are the first peoples to create agrarian culture, agriculture, hunter-gatherers. We are the first people to create tools. We are the first people to create governance formations and structures. We are the first people to create civilization. And so we are the first peoples of the earth. And until we recognize who and what we are, we will continue to be subverted and disunited and all these other isms and things that are keeping black people from moving forward. But we have Traore, we have Tiani, we have Goita, we have you, brother. We have our brothers and sisters all around this world right now. Malima, Muhammad looks like he's promising. We have Africans that are standing up and saying, we are not going to take this anymore. We envision a different society. We envision something different for our young people. And the young people are standing up and saying that we don't want pretty talk. We don't want pretty words on paper or in speeches. We want concrete action. We want to build a world where we could really live as human beings and not just scripting and scratching, not robbing each other or selling drugs to make a living. We want a better world for ourselves. And so we are the leaders that we've been looking for. Stay with me, brother. We are the leaders. Stay with me, brother. We are the leaders.
We are the leaders
that we've been looking for.
We've been looking for.
That we've been looking for.
We are the leaders that we've been looking for, Brother Charles. I thank you so much.
Brother. Now, please continue to say that. If I said anything that jive with your audience, let that be the lesson. You are the leadership that you've been looking for. Stop looking for fire from the sky or the Mohammedan or Jesus Christ figure. That you are, each of us is God having a human experience. So you are the leader. You are the Jesus. You are the Muhammad that we're looking for to liberate us.
Thank you. I thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brother Charlie. That's Charles, Brother Charles Asukile Mitchell, international Pan-Africanist, the son of Africa, the son of the soil. Thank you so much, Brother Charlie, and I'm looking forward to talk to you once more again. It has been a fascinating interview. Thank you so much. You stay well, and all the best, and the best of our fellow brothers there in the whole USA. I thank you once more, Brother Charlie Asukile Mitchell, our son of Africa. It's been a fascinating interview. Thank you so much. Have yourself a blessed time. Goodbye. There you go. That's Mr. Charles Asukile there, Mitchell, a Pan-Africanist, an international Pan-Africanist based in New York City, and of course, the son of Africa. That's where we leave it for tonight. Our dear listeners, thank you so much for being part of us until we meet again next time. So that's all we had for tonight. That's Mr. Charles Asukile Mitchell talking to us all the way from New York City. And so this is how we come to the end of our show. And Nomasontoga Mabasef, she's up next to take good care of you. So from me to you, it's a good night.